Next, we're going to look at two older ways of saving state information before we jump into session state or session variables, which is how we'll be using and maintaining state both for the practice problem and the assignment. But first, sometimes we'll see older websites, ASP.NET websites, using what we call cross-page posting or query strings. So let's just look at those real quick and talk about some issues with those. So cross-page posting is similar to what we looked at the first Windows application, where we can grab information from one page to the other. You can actually kind of do that, even though I said you couldn't. But there are some problems with it. So here's our first web page. We have a name and first name, last name, and a button. And when we click that button, we're going to jump to the second page called Cross Page 2. Two ways we can do that. One is with the button we can list a different postback URL here. Another way is in the code. We can do what is called a server transfer, and that'll tell the web server to load in a different page. So here we're telling it to load in cross page 2. So let's just run this. We'll see the page load up. Let's actually click run this time. Okay, now we'll see the page load up. And we can enter some test information here. I'm just entering test and info. And now when I click the button, it goes to page 2 here. It grabs the name of the first page, the title, and then the information I entered, test info, is grabbed and displayed here. So let's look at how that works. So let's stop this. And so when the second page loads, it runs the page load event. And so it checks if there's a previous page. This is a predefined constant. And then it grabs the page information. It grabs the page title based on the previous page. It then casts the page into the right type, so that then we can grab the text fields. So like we can grab, or the attributes, so we can grab the previous page's full name property. So we can grab some information from the previous page. Now we can't go back any further than that. One of the issues this has is that when in large websites where you're filling out forms and completing orders, you end up passing all the information for the entire thing from page to page and maintaining it all in separate variables or in separate hidden controls. And so session variables will kind of take care of that. There are also some issues with security with this sort of passing of information. Let's look at one other way you'll sometimes see information passed, and that's with query strings. So let's look at that. Okay, I've loaded up the query string examples from the chapter source code. And there is a sender page that will load, and it'll just have a list box and a checkbox and a button that we can look. So let's just try this out. And again, it will collect this information. I can choose a type of carpet. I can choose whether or not to show the full detail. I can hit view information. It'll load in the second page. And here, notice here's the query page recipient. But it adds this question mark and some information afterwards. So it actually puts the information we want in the URL here, which is called the URL query string, in plain text so we can see it. You often see web pages do this, and one problem this has is that it's easy to modify this in different ways. And then we're just displaying this information. So let's go back and see how this works. So when we click on this button, we will create a URL that we want to run, and we'll actually construct this URL with the information we want in it. And then we'll do a response redirect. Last time we looked at server transfer. There's actually a number of ways to load in different web pages. We can do a server transfer or a response redirect. And with response redirect, you can specify a URL to go to. So we're actually creating a URL and doing a response redirect to open up that URL, which will open up our second web page. Then our second web page here will display that information, and we look at that code behind that. So when the page loads, where you can request information from the query string. We can just do what's called a request.queryString and grab the information from the query string and display that, in this case, on a text box. So it is possible to do this, and you'll frequently see this on some web pages. The query strings at the top of the URLs that get quite large, but you have to be careful. It's not very secure. And we'll wrap up. I will mention one other way that information sometimes moved between web pages, and that's with cookies. Cookies are small data items that are stored inside browsers. And again, you can create a cookie in your code and work with cookies. But again, there are issues with cookies, and so we won't be using cookies for our state information. So now we'll look at the next video, which will actually talk about using session state information.